But first, the US state of Florida is starting to feel the force of Hurricane Irma after the storm cut a path of destruction through the Caribbean. Irma weakened after smashing into Cuba, but has regained its strength and is currently a Category 4 storm. In what's now the biggest evacuation in US history, millions have been told to leave their homes, and those that remain are under a strict curfew. This is the latest satellite picture from the area, and you can see the size and force of the system. It's hovering over the Florida Keys right now and is beginning to make its way towards the western side of the state. Our coverage begins with North America correspondent Connor Duffy in Miami.
Irma's fury is transforming the Sunshine State. More than 5 million people have been told to get out.
This is a deadly storm, and our state has never seen anything like it. Millions of Floridians will see major hurricane impacts with deadly storm surge and life-threatening winds.
Many are listening and are flying to safety in any city that'll take them.
I was just worried about getting out of here, just like how everything just like kept changing, you know, like we had to scramble around and find flights, and it's just chaotic down here, so it's a little scary.
John Alleman, a local councillor, her husband and kids have evacuated twice. They headed for Tampa, only to flee there too when the hurricane swung west this morning.
We have friends that have evacuated to Orlando, to Atlanta, to New York. A lot of folks went to Tampa. So then as the storm has shifted, folks are sort of shuffling around the state.
Their own home's still too dangerous, so they're locking in at a friend's. And how are you feeling?
Anxious. We drove through one tiny little feeder band on the way. It was very dark. It was very gusty.
At schools across the city, makeshift shelters have no more room.
We got here actually last night at like 5 in the morning.
Oh wow.
They took us to like 3 other shelters before this one because all the other 3 shelters were at the full capacity.
Firemen like Captain Ignatius Carroll have left their own families to provide emergency care.
As any first responder, you're committed to serving your community, but we're also concerned about our loved ones as well. So a lot of times we try our best to prepare them while we're out here working.
And the threats, not just from the hurricanes, winds and floods.
There is a serious threat of significant storm surge flooding along the entire west coast of Florida, and this has increased to 15 feet of impact above ground level.
A curfew's in place to protect those who stayed from flying debris, flooding and tornadoes. Hurricane Irma's changed track so many times that areas that once seemed safe now face being right in the eye of the storm. That's got an entire state on edge, and more than 20 million people face a very anxious night waiting to see where this superstorm lands. Connor Duffy, ABC News, Miami.
And let's take a look at some live pictures from Miami, where it's just after 5 a.m. local time. Right now, the city is being lashed by the outer bands of Hurricane Irma. The latest advice from the US National Hurricane Center is that the storm will continue to strengthen as it approaches Florida. The eye is forecast across the lower Florida Keys over the next few hours before Hurricane Irma moves up the state's western coast. In the Caribbean, Irma has now moved on, and residents there are starting to pick up the pieces. The official death toll currently stands at 27, and survivors on the affected islands are struggling to find shelter or a way to leave. North America correspondent Zoe Daniel has the latest.
As Florida braces for impact, the Caribbean is reeling from the effects of the storm. Cuba is the latest island to feel Hurricane Irma's destructive force.
I have nothing. My house is ruined. It's destroyed.
1 million people were ordered to evacuate before the Category 5 storm, with winds of up to 275 kilometres per hour, hit the coastline.
The winds were really strong. It knocked down light poles which fell on the house, and the ocean came in this far.
This is the first time in decades that the eye of a Category 5 storm has made landfall in Cuba. With it came storm surges and flooding rain.
Now I have to clean all this up, take it all out of this disaster area and throw away everything that was ruined, because I can't use it. It's no good.
Cuba is just the latest island to feel Irma's fury. On St Martin, the full impact of the storm is becoming clear. 70% of structures are damaged or destroyed.
I have lived in St Martin for 30 years, so I've seen plenty of hurricanes. And frankly, there are no words for this one.
We have so far counted 9 people who have died, 7 are missing. 112 people were injured, including 2 seriously, but this toll must be taken with a lot of precaution because we could discover more victims.
Just as islanders were picking themselves up from Hurricane Irma, they feared Hurricane Jose was about to hit. It now appears to have headed north, the first glimmer of relief for a devastated region. Zoe Daniel, ABC News.
To Mexico now, where the death toll from a massive earthquake off the southern coast is rising. More than 90 people are now known to have died in the disaster, and the search continues to find anyone alive beneath the rubble. Those who escaped the damage are counting their blessings, but for some families, there's only heartbreak. Chief Foreign Correspondent Philip Williams has travelled to the town of Tonala.
In the midst of incredible beauty, the searing pain of shared grief. Today, families gathered to bury their loved ones. Dardanel Navarro was killed when a wall in his home collapsed on top of him. This is one of the first of many funerals to come. The procession passes what used to be home to 10 people, including Rosa Alvarez and Magdalena Pellegrino. They've recovered a few possessions, but their bedrooms are too dangerous to enter. Both survived by running into the backyard.
Thank God the earthquake stopped, and then we ran to the street and the neighbours took us in and looked after us. We are still here. Thanks to God we're alive.
Their story is all too common. Homes reduced to rubble, lives upturned by a deadly but unseen force. In the nearby fishing village of Paradon, the boats lie idle. The fish disappeared when the waters in the lagoon mysteriously emptied just after the quake. Adela Lopez has moved her family into this derelict building. Her home partially collapsed and what remains is a death trap. She's desperate for help, but none has come.
We have no electricity. We have no water. All the cooking pots and clothing is dirty. We're in a very bad situation.
This is perhaps one of the most amazing stories of survival that we've come across. This, believe it or not, was a 2-storey house. It's absolutely flattened. And the reason the entire family escaped death was that they were at somebody else's funeral and only their son was at home. 17-year-old Uriel Agare told me how he'd escaped his upstairs bedroom by diving through the hole that had been a wall. He feels lucky to be alive, but it's all been too much to bear.
It's difficult. I thought it was the last day of my life, that this was the end.
His family wait in the backyard. It took them 5 years to build their modest home and a mad minute of violence to lose it.
I don't care about material things. My son is alive. My son is alive.
Thousands of already poor families have lost everything. Here, few believe the government will put it right. Now they can't even trust the very ground they stand on. Philip Williams, ABC News, in the village of Paradon, Mexico.